I sat there motionless, the linen napkin still folded in my lap, as my daughter raised her crystal glass and smiled the way she always did before drawing blood. "To style," Chloe said sweetly, "and to those who dress like Goodwill mannequins and call it personality." Laughter bloomed around the table. Even her husband smirked. My granddaughter looked at me, but didn't speak. I glanced down at my vintage skirt, the cardigan fastened with the brooch my mother wore to chemo, the one I'd once promised Chloe would inherit, after hemming her Easter dresses by hand, after giving up my gallery show to help her raise Maya. After carrying 3 generations of women on my back, I was no longer mother, no longer honored, just the target at the center of her punchline. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The smell of warm banana bread lingered in Tommy and Nadia's open-concept kitchen, but it did nothing to soften the tension crackling underneath the surface. Ginny stood at the island, clutching a glossy brochure with a smiling couple posed in front of a vintage locomotive. Her eyes sparkled as she turned it around, showing the cover to her son and daughter-in-law. "It's the new Rockies to Red Rocks line," she said with a hopeful lilt. "You pass through Glenwood Springs, stay a night in Moab." I thought, maybe I could join you 3 this summer. Nadia didn't look up from her phone. Her perfectly manicured thumb hovered as she scrolled, pausing only to sip from a matte ceramic mug labeled, "But first, coffee." "It's not really a grandma speed trip," she said flatly, then forced a smile like a bad actress trying to soften the blow. "It's go, go, go. You'd probably hate it." Ginny blinked. "I love trains," she said, more to herself than them. Tommy chuckled and leaned back against the marble counter, arms folded across his gym-branded quarter zip. "Come on, Mom. You'd be exhausted by day 2. It's a tight itinerary. Plus, it's not exactly senior-friendly." Ginny smiled politely, the same way she did at salespeople who mispronounced her name or assumed she needed help reaching something on a shelf. "Of course," she said, folding the brochure carefully along its crease. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You didn't," Nadia said, already distracted again. "It's just, you know." "I know," Ginny echoed, smoothing the travel paper before slipping it back into her handbag. Silence swelled between them, filled only by the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tapping of Nadia's nails on her phone screen. "Well," Ginny said, glancing around, "I should head out. The roads will get slushy by late afternoon." Tommy walked her to the door with a casual pat on the back, like a courteous bouncer. "Take it easy, okay?" "Always do," Ginny replied with a small nod. She didn't bother with her coat until she got outside. The January air bit at her neck as she pulled her scarf tight and clicked her keys. Her old Subaru, faded green and still smelling faintly of peppermint and dog treats from a long-gone golden retriever, beeped once and unlocked. Inside the car, Ginny sat still for a moment, both hands on the steering wheel. Her breath fogged up the windshield, and she wiped it with her sleeve before reaching into the glove compartment. From behind a rubber-banded stack of gas receipts and AAA maps, she pulled out a red leather travel wallet. It snapped open with a quiet, intentional click. Inside, nestled between a folded itinerary and a hotel confirmation, was a one-way train ticket. Denver to Sedona. Coach upgraded to Silverleaf. Departure, 10 days. Her name was printed neatly on the top. Virginia Coates. She ran her fingers over the embossed paper like it was velvet. A text buzzed from her phone in the cup holder. Group chat. Family trips Tonkatsu 25. Nadia. Got the early bird upgrades. Can't wait to do the hot springs hike. Just us 3. Just us 3. Ginny stared at the message for a long time, then powered off the phone. She opened the visor mirror. Her reflection stared back, calm eyes framed by soft silver hair. Not fragile, not slow, just uninvited. In the passenger seat sat the brochure again, the same one she'd shown them, though this copy was marked with post-its and handwritten notes. Marge's name was scribbled next to a few stops. Ginny smiled to herself. She didn't cry, she didn't fume, she didn't even flinch. Instead, she reached into her purse, pulled out a silver pen, and underlined a sentence on the itinerary. Some journeys are better taken without baggage. She folded the paper closed, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb with quiet grace. As her taillights disappeared into the Denver dusk, a faint glint reflected from the train ticket still sitting open beside her. And that was the moment Ginny Coates stopped asking for a seat and started claiming her route. The train let out a low cinematic hiss as the final boarding call echoed down the platform at Denver Union Station. A crisp morning sun glinted off the silver-leaf carriages, sleek against the Rockies' snowy horizon. Ginny stepped up onto the train with one hand gripping the polished brass rail, the other tugging a compact red suitcase behind her. Beside her, Marge Dillon, wide-brimmed hat, fuchsia scarf, and enough charm to power a parade, heaved her own carry-on aboard with an exaggerated grunt. "Never let a man pack for you," Marge muttered, as she settled in beside Ginny in their window-facing seats. "They bring chaos and cologne. You bring granola and grace." Ginny smiled, her eyes scanning the quiet luxury around them. Soft leather headrests, burl wood trim, a glass of champagne already bubbling on her tray. Outside the window, Denver's skyline rolled away in reverse. Ginny leaned back and exhaled. No one was waiting to wave goodbye. Marge handed her a pair of oversized sunglasses. "For when we hit Sedona, son and ex-husbands, both too bright to look at directly," Ginny chuckled, slipping them on. "Noted." By late afternoon, the train curved into canyons of rust and ochre. Ginny stood briefly to stretch and caught her reflection in the window. Silver hair, upright posture, lips relaxed in quiet delight. She raised her phone, snapped a photo of herself in front of the Crimson Cliffs, and attached it to a text. To Ellie. "Wish you were here. Sweetheart." 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "Ellie, wish I could go with you instead. Looks incredible." Ginny read it twice, then once more, slower. She turned to Marge. "I'm sending her a postcard." Marge grinned. "Damn right you are." That night in Flagstaff, they checked into a boutique hotel with a stone fireplace crackling in the lobby and tiny lavender sachets on the pillows. While Marge disappeared for a massage she swore was doctor-mandated, Ginny took the elevator up to their room and pulled out a zippered leather binder. She laid it open across the hotel desk like an old blueprint. Inside, her living trust, her healthcare proxy, old property deeds, a spreadsheet titled Future Allocations. A light knock startled her. She turned as the door opened, revealing Reuben Hale, her estate attorney, casual in jeans and a brown sport coat, holding a takeout coffee like it was a peace offering. Well, he said, closing the door behind him. "Back from the land of retirement and bingo?" Ginny raised an eyebrow. "Never played bingo in my life." He set the coffee beside her. "Then I take it you're serious. What's on the chopping block?" She tapped a neatly labeled tab in the binder. "The will, the trust, the medical proxy. Everything's too tidy." Reuben pulled up a chair and adjusted his glasses. "Tidy's good." Ginny didn't look up. "Tidy favors the undeserving. I'm looking to rearrange." Outside the window, Flagstaff flickered in the quiet mountain twilight. Reuben leaned back in his chair. "You sure you want to do this?" Ginny flipped to the last page. Her signature. "He told me I was too old to travel." "Your son?" She looked at him, eyes sharp. "The boy who once cried because I didn't let him pack 5 Lego sets for summer camp now tells me I'd slow them down. He may be 49, but he's still carrying the wrong kind of baggage." Reuben nodded. "Then let's unpack." The next morning, Ginny stood by the postbox outside the hotel, gloved hand holding a postcard. A red rock canyon in bold ink, sunlit and wild. On the back she'd written, "Freedom fits in a carry-on. Love you, Grandma G." She slid it into the slot. Inside, Marge waited with 2 fresh coffees and a raised eyebrow. "Did you tell her yet?" Ginny buttoned her coat slowly. "I sent the truth." Marge handed over a pastry wrapped in warm paper. "Let's hope she's got the appetite for it." Ginny sat by the window in their second-floor hotel room, the morning sun warming her shoulder through gauzy curtains. She'd been up since before dawn, woken not by noise or dreams, but by a sense of urgency. Not panic, purpose. Across the desk, Reuben clicked his pen twice before sliding the living trust across the table. Here it is, same structure as last time. Primary heir, Thomas Coates. Contingents, none listed. Ginny didn't even glance at the paperwork. Her eyes were fixed on the view, a slow-moving freight train snaking through the pines below, copper glinting on its rails. Let's change the route, she said quietly. Reuben looked up. How far off course are we talking? She turned to him, her voice steady. Far enough that he never sees it coming. He flipped the folder open and retrieved a fresh set of forms. Okay, start from the top, she pointed. I want the proceeds from the Lakewood property redirected. All of it. Into a youth travel scholarship fund. Target. Underserved teens. Out-of-state programs only. They need to leave to learn. Reuben scribbled notes. And the house in Estes? Sold, she said firmly. Split between the travel fund and a grant for senior solo travelers. Reuben raised a brow. That one's new. Ginny shrugged. Most people don't realize how much strength it takes to leave alone. Might as well make it easier for someone else. He nodded, flipping pages. And your granddaughter? Ginny hesitated. Then reached for the folder and opened a blank addendum sheet. Ellie gets something, but not just for being blood. I want it tied to a condition. Reuben leaned forward. Which is? She has to apply for something. A study abroad program, a language immersion school, an independent project. Anything that doesn't involve her parents filtering it through a hashtag. He chuckled. You really think she'll do it? Ginny reached into her handbag and pulled out her phone. On the screen, a photo of Ellie wrapped in the wool scarf Ginny had sent last winter, holding a coffee outside a bookstore, her smile effortless and real. She tapped the image once, enlarging it. She already is, Ginny said, her voice softer now. She just needs a little room. Marge wandered in from the hallway carrying a bag of complimentary muffins and a carton of grapefruit juice. You two still rewriting the Constitution in here? Just a family trust, Reuben said dryly. Marge tossed the muffins onto the bed and sat by the edge of the desk. Tommy called you too slow, right? Well, sweetheart. She thumbed through the updated documents, grinning. You're legally sprinting. Ginny's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It's not about getting back at him. Reuben and Marge exchanged a glance. She pulled a fresh piece of hotel stationery toward her and began writing. The scratch of her pen filled the room like the sound of leaves against pavement. Quiet but impossible to ignore. To whom it may concern, this is not punishment. It's rerouting. Some maps are wrong from the beginning. I'm just drawing mine again, clearly, this time. GC. She folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, and tucked it inside the estate folder without ceremony. The TV in the corner played quietly, showing a local weather forecast. High sun and low winds across the canyon trails. Marge muted it. Reuben gathered the paperwork, slipped everything into his briefcase, then paused. You sure you don't want to sleep on any of this? Ginny looked at him. I've already lost enough nights. Just then, her phone buzzed. A message from Ellie. Image attachment. Ellie in Ginny's scarf, standing in front of her high school library with a flyer in hand. Semester abroad in Ireland. Info session today. Caption. Think I'm ready to start packing. Ginny showed the screen to Marge. Marge let out a low whistle. Looks like someone else found her walking shoes. Ginny said nothing. She simply saved the photo to a folder labeled Legacy and stared at it for a long, quiet beat. The inn sat just outside Sedona, tucked into the red hills like it had grown there, stone by stone, over the course of 100 years. No reception desk, no digital keypads. Just a wrought iron bell on a pull cord and a handwritten note taped to the front door. If you found us, you belong here. Ginny stepped into the lobby carrying only her purse and a manila envelope. Marge had stayed behind in town for a spa appointment and a margarita with a salt rim and no saltwater talk, she'd declared. That suited Ginny fine. Some steps had to be taken alone. The woman behind the front desk smiled like they were old friends. Virginia Coates? Ginny nodded. Room 3, upstairs, end of the hall. No TV, but the view does most of the talking. Ginny's room was small, a single iron frame bed, honeycomb tiles in the bathroom, a tiny balcony overlooking the canyon. She placed the envelope on the desk, then sat on the edge of the bed and took off her shoes slowly, like she had nowhere to be and everywhere to go. She signed the documents that night with a steady hand and a full heart. The next morning, just after sunrise, Ginny walked to the edge of the property where a rusted mailbox leaned slightly under a juniper tree. Inside, she placed the envelope addressed to Reuben Hale, neatly labeled, sealed, and stamped. No second thoughts, just a note inside. Effective immediately, GC. Later that morning, she visited a small nonprofit hostel on the edge of downtown, a mismatched house turned community haven for traveling teens. The kind of place that smelled like old wood floors, cumin, and wet laundry. She met the director, a wiry woman named Lisa, with paint on her fingers and kindness in her eyes. "I'd like to sponsor 2 beds, Ginny said, handing over a check and a card. Lisa blinked. "For how long?" Ginny smiled. "As long as the road keeps calling someone." Before she left, she placed a laminated sign on the back of the dorm door. Donated in honor of Virginia Coates, who never waited to be invited at a nearby bookshop. Ginny browsed the stationery aisle in silence. Her fingers brushed over leather-bound journals in every shade. Some stiff and formal, others soft and worn, like denim. She chose a midnight blue one with faint gold flecks across the cover. The clerk offered to gift wrap it. "No, thank you," she said, gently tucking a folded note inside instead. "Maps are just where others have gone before. Make your own." Grandma G. By noon, she boarded the train again, rejoining Marge in the Silverleaf carriage. Marge handed her a warm apple cider in a paper cup. "Got the spa package and a scandalous foot rub," she whispered. "You finish your secret mission." Ginny just nodded and took a long sip, the cinnamon clinging to the roof of her mouth. Outside, the canyon walls unfurled again, vast, timeless, and entirely unbothered by who came or went. The car rocked gently as the train rounded a bend, the sun washing everything in gold. Ginny reached into her purse and pulled out the receipt from the youth hostel donation. She folded it twice and slid it behind a photo of Ellie she kept in her wallet. Her phone buzzed. New email. Subject, trust receipt filed. From Reuben. "Filed and locked. It's done. No loose ends. You did good, Ginny." She closed the phone and leaned back, resting her head against the window. The vibrations of the train felt like a heartbeat. Ginny was trimming rosemary by her kitchen window when the call came through. She let it ring twice before answering. "Tommy," she said evenly. "Hey, Mom, you got a second?" She wiped her hands on a dish towel and sat down at the breakfast table. The rosemary still lingered on her fingertips. "I do." He launched into it with that familiar briskness, like a man pitching a deal to someone he thought didn't understand the stakes. "So listen. Nadia and I found this amazing vacation property just outside Breckenridge. Real estate's nuts right now, but this one's a steal. Corner lot, walking distance to the lifts, space for a hot tub. We'd rent it out most of the year, build equity fast. Thing is, we need a co-signer." Ginny blinked slowly. "A co-signer? Just on paper," he rushed to add. "Nothing risky. Your credit's solid, no impact to you. It's more of a formality, really." There was a beat of silence. She didn't raise her voice, didn't laugh, just asked, "Didn't you say I was too old to travel with you?" Tommy groaned. "Oh, Mom, that again?" "You said I'd slow you down," she continued calmly. "That I wasn't, what was it? Grandma Speed? Come on, don't take things so personally. That was a joke. This is business." Ginny stood and poured herself a glass of water. Her back was straight, her voice even. No, Thomas, this is clarity. He paused, his tone shifting just slightly. You're saying no? I'm saying never again. She ended the call before he could respond. By early afternoon, Ginny was sitting across from Reuben Hale in his downtown office, a neat minimalist space tucked between a Thai restaurant and a shoe repair shop that hadn't updated its signs since 1984. Reuben didn't ask for context. He simply sipped his tea and opened his laptop. I want a full block on any financial instruments requiring my signature, Ginny said. Power of attorney, co-signer rights, shared asset access. All of it. Reuben nodded. Done. And another thing, she said, reaching into her purse for the old healthcare proxy form. Tommy's listed here. You want him removed? She slid the paper toward him. I want Marge added. He raised an eyebrow. Medical proxy. She's already seen me cry, swear, and sing off-key. If anything happens, I'd rather have her making the calls than a man who thinks I'm just a signature away from convenience. Reuben gave a low whistle. You really are done. Ginny's voice was soft, almost mournful. I think I was done the moment he stopped seeing me as family and started seeing me as leverage. Reuben updated the form, clicked print, and passed it across the desk for her signature. She signed with steady grace. Consider yourself protected, he said. No, she corrected gently. Consider myself finally seen. 2 days later, Tommy stood in the sleek, sanitized lobby of a Denver bank, holding a paper in one hand and his phone in the other, blinking like someone who'd just been slapped mid-sentence. I'm sorry, the banker repeated. We can't process this. Your co-signer has formally declined authorization. The block came through this morning. Tommy looked down at the application again, then back at his phone. He'd called his mother twice. No answer. No exceptions, he asked, voice tight. The banker gave a sympathetic half-smile. Sir, she's fully removed herself from all joint eligibility. There's a note attached from her attorney. Tommy's phone buzzed with a new message. Reuben Hale. Mr. Coates, all financial ties between you and Ms. Virginia Coates have been formally revoked and sealed. Please direct any further requests through your own legal counsel. Tommy stared at the screen. His ears burned. Nadia was waiting in the car. She'd already picked out the furniture for a house they didn't own. Back at home, Ginny moved through her living room with deliberate grace. She took down the last remaining photo of Tommy from her mantle, a graduation shot, blurry and too bright, and placed it in a drawer without ceremony. Then she poured 2 glasses of wine. Marge entered a moment later with Chinese takeout and an arm full of laughter. God, I could smell lo mein from the parking lot. Good, Ginny said, handing her a glass. We're celebrating. Marge raised an eyebrow. What's the occasion? Ginny tapped her glass against Marge's. I finally said no. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the top floor of the estate planning office. Ginny stepped out with calm intention. Her black pea coat crisp against the backdrop of frosted windows and brushed steel. Reuben met her at the front desk with a nod and no small amount of admiration. You're early, he said. I've been early my whole life, Ginny replied, unclasping her gloves. They just didn't notice. He led her to a private conference room, its walls lined with abstract art and silence. On the glass table sat a slim stack of papers. This is it, Reuben said, setting his palm lightly atop the packet. Irrevocable, fully protected. No access from outside parties unless explicitly named. Once we file, there's no going back. Ginny took her seat and removed a fountain pen from her bag. The same one she'd used to sign the first deed with her late husband, and the same one she'd used to cross Tommy's name off it. I've had enough things go back, she said quietly. Let this one move forward. She signed each page with calm precision, initialed where required, and pressed her thumbprint in blue ink on the final sheet. When she was done, Reuben collected everything like a priest folding a sacred cloth. Congratulations, he said. Your legacy's yours again. Later that week, Ginny sat in a folding chair in the back row of a seminar titled elder autonomy and financial boundary setting. The room smelled like burnt coffee and printed paper. A slide on the screen read, "Recognizing inheritance manipulation." She didn't take photos, she took notes. In a small leather notebook with a brass clasp and Ellie's name embossed on the first page. The stories she heard weren't surprising. A daughter who added herself to her mother's credit card. A nephew who borrowed his aunt's retirement. A son who signed his mother's name to a refinance. Ginny wrote one phrase in bold: "Control is not love." When the session ended, she thanked the speaker, took a pamphlet, and left without saying much. Some quiet revolutions didn't need banners, just signatures. Back at home, Marge had already set out tea in porcelain cups Ginny rarely used. No occasion, just instinct. "To the quietest revenge," Marge said, raising her cup. Ginny clinked hers lightly. "To peace." Outside, the wind rattled dry leaves across the porch. Ginny glanced at her phone, then stood and walked to the office in the back of the house. She opened a folder labeled Departure Planning. Inside, her funeral preferences, digital passwords, executor directives, and a file labeled Obituary Draft 3. She sat and read it aloud under her breath. Virginia Coates, age 78, passed peacefully in her home, a world traveler, advocate, and longtime lover of handwritten postcards, survived by those who honored her independence. She paused, tapped her pen on the edge of the desk, then struck out a line that once read, "Survived by her son, Thomas Coates." She didn't replace it. Some absences were better left to echo. That evening, Ginny sat in her sunroom as twilight dropped like ink across the lawn. She was halfway through a novel she didn't care for, sipping lukewarm chamomile, when her phone buzzed. "Ellie, I miss you more than I should. School's loud. No one listens like you do." Ginny read the message 3 times, her lips twitching at the corners. She replied, "I hear you. Come when you're ready. The door's not locked." A moment passed, then Ellie sent a photo. Her bookshelf at school, the blue journal Ginny had gifted her perched at the center, a pen tucked neatly into the spine. Caption: Started page 1. Ginny closed her book and placed it face down on the table. It didn't matter what happened to the characters on the page. She had her own story to watch now. It started with a drawer Ginny hadn't opened in 5 years. In the quiet of a gray morning, she pulled it open and stared at its contents. Faded school portraits, dog-eared report cards, birthday cards with stiff, reluctant handwriting. She sifted through them one by one, the same way she once picked broken glass out of the garden after a storm. At the very back was the photo, Tommy's high school graduation. Ginny remembered the day clearly. June heat, a folding chair that wobbled, her lipstick slightly smudged from crying too early in the ceremony. In the picture, he stood with his arm half wrapped around her, diploma in hand. Eyes already elsewhere. She held it for a long moment, then placed it face down on the table. She didn't throw it away, just didn't need it displayed anymore. Later that day, she found herself in the attic, opening the long-forgotten Samsonite luggage she'd stored away years ago. Inside were old scarves, a pair of worn gloves, and a tiny brass keychain shaped like an airplane. Tommy had given it to her after his first solo flight for business. She held it in her hand and whispered, "What did we do to each other?" Then she zipped it all closed and brought it downstairs. The women's shelter sat on the edge of downtown, modest, brick-faced, with a garden of lavender and white sage out front. Ginny carried in 2 roller bags and a check. The director greeted her with warmth and disbelief. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Ginny said. "Suitcases should move, not gather dust. Same goes for people." She filled out a donation form, then hesitated. "I also want to fund something longer term, a travel grant, for women who leave and don't know where to go next." The director blinked, visibly moved. "That's rare," Ginny nodded. "So are second chances. Let's make them more common." As she left, She passed a bulletin board covered in hand-drawn maps. One had "To Denver" written in bold marker, a dotted line winding from nowhere to a little heart. Ginny smiled. Some people still believed in finding their own way. Back home, Ruben's email came through at 3:14 p.m. Subject: Notarized confirmation, all removals. Final attached was a PDF with a summary line that felt more like a benediction than a bullet point. Thomas Coates, fully removed from all estate structures. No appeal, no access. Ginny printed it, slid it into her estate binder, and exhaled. Not relief, just space. That evening, her phone buzzed. "Ellie, can I come visit? Just me, no parents. Just me." Ginny didn't even hesitate. "Yes, when?" "Tomorrow, I'll take the early train." Ginny read it twice, then went to the guest room and made the bed herself. Tucking the corners the way her own mother had taught her, they met at the trailhead just after 9 a.m. The air was crisp and sunlit, the leaves crunching underfoot like crumpled paper. Ellie wore hiking boots too clean to trust, and a denim jacket covered in pins, most of them places she hadn't been. Yet, they didn't talk much at first, just walked. At a clearing near a lookout point, Ginny stopped and handed her a folded brochure. Ellie opened it slowly, a program for international studies, with destinations marked in blue ink: Prague, Kyoto, Cape Town. "I don't want to push you," Ginny said softly, "but I want you to know there are maps without filters, trips that don't need captions, and doors that only open when you walk toward them." Ellie held the brochure like it was something alive. "I want to go," she whispered, "not just to escape them, to find out who I am without them." Ginny reached into her coat pocket and handed her a train ticket. It wasn't for any specific date, just a voucher. "Then take the first ride when you're ready." Ellie looked up, eyes glassy. "How did you know I needed this?" Ginny smiled gently. "Because I once needed it too. And no one gave it to me." The letter wasn't long. Ginny sat at her old typewriter, the one she'd rescued from a neighbor's garage sale years ago, back when her hands still ached from missing handwritten things. Each keystroke sounded like a closing door. She fed in a single sheet of crisp linen paper, centered her fingers, and wrote without pausing. "Thomas, you told me I couldn't go with you, so I decided not to follow." That's not abandonment, that's direction. Mom. She didn't sign it with love, or even her full name. Just Mom. The one title he hadn't earned in years, but still expected loyalty from. She folded the letter neatly, placed it in an envelope with no return address, and left it on her hallway table. She wasn't mailing it. Not yet, maybe not ever. But some truths were for the record, not for the recipient. The next morning, the HOA office buzzed with the usual slow hum of printer jams and coffee that tasted like it had been brewed in 1987. Ginny had come in to drop off a set of documents, minor updates to her security preferences and landscaping permissions. Simple, routine, until the front door slammed open. "Where is she?" Tommy's voice cracked through the sterile air like a fire alarm. Ginny, seated calmly across from the manager's desk, didn't turn. Tommy stormed past the front counter, red in the face, flanked by confusion and entitlement. "I need access to her files. You're making a mistake not letting me see them. I'm her son." The manager, a 30-something woman named Jill, with tortoiseshell glasses and a clipboard that didn't tremble easily, stepped forward. "Sir, you need to leave. I have a right to—" "You don't," Jill said coolly. "You were formally removed from all proxy status. The documents are sealed. We're not authorized to release anything. Not even your mother's gate code." Ginny finally turned. "You don't need the code, Thomas. You were never locked out. You just weren't invited in." Tommy stared at her, the weight of his own irrelevance dawning like slow poison. "Unbelievable," he muttered, backing out. Outside, he got into the car where Nadia was waiting, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She didn't even ask how it went. Just picked up her phone and started typing furiously. 10 minutes later, Ginny's phone pinged. A social media notification she hadn't asked for, hadn't wanted, but received all the same. Nadia vibes. Some people don't know how to age gracefully, and it shows. Ginny stared at it with the kind of stillness that could be mistaken for apathy, until she opened a file on her desktop titled Documentation of Pattern, Digital, Verbal. She took a screenshot, dragged it in, saved. A pebble tossed in a stream, not worth reacting to, but recorded just the same. 2 days later, Ginny sat on stage at a senior independent summit held in the city library's largest meeting room. The topic was Agency After 70, and her name was printed on the agenda in bold, serifed font. She wore navy, clean lines, soft scarf. No jewelry except a silver brooch shaped like a compass. The host introduced her as a lifetime traveler, retired editor, and a state rights advocate. When she stood to speak, the audience quieted. "I'm not here because I was victimized," she began. "I'm here because I was underestimated. And I think that's more common than people want to admit." She shared only what was necessary. No names, no salacious stories, just moments. Questions never asked, choices assumed, paths rerouted without her consent. But I believe, she finished, that the real map we leave behind isn't in what we build. It's in what we choose not to carry anymore. The room rose in quiet applause. She didn't cry. That night, a letter arrived from Ellie. Not a text, not an email. A real letter, handwritten in black ink on thick textured stationery that still smelled faintly of eucalyptus. Inside was a short poem. "You move like rivers unblocked, not chasing, but carving. You carry no one, but you leave room for those who walk beside you. I see you." Ginny read it once, then again. Then folded it and placed it in her suitcase, the one she always kept half-packed. The letter arrived in a stiff white envelope, tucked between an AARP flyer and a grocery store coupon sheet. Ginny spotted it immediately. The return address, Carrick, Deal and Hartman, Estate Litigation Group. She didn't open it. Instead, she placed it flat on her kitchen counter, poured herself a small glass of elderflower tonic, and called Reuben. "They're making a move," she said. "I figured they would," Reuben replied calmly. "Give me an hour." He didn't ask what it said. He didn't need to. By the end of the week, Reuben had submitted a 34-page preemptive defense packet to the court, thick with dated timestamps, notarized forms, audio transcripts from prior trust meetings, and even video interviews. Ginny watched one of the clips briefly. It showed her seated calmly across from a third-party evaluator. "Name? Virginia Coates. Do you know what year it is?" "Yes, and I know exactly how I want to spend the rest of it." She smiled at her own voice, steady, unshaken. Reuben attached a sealed affidavit from Dr. Leland, her longtime primary care physician, who wrote in firm, clinical prose, "Ms. Coates presents as mentally competent, fully self-directed, and acutely aware of her legal and personal decisions. She exhibits no cognitive decline or signs of coercion." Another note was added from a licensed geriatric therapist who had conducted a voluntary evaluation at Ginny's request. Subject demonstrates independent thought, assertiveness, and no signs of manipulation or psychological pressure. By the time Tommy's lawyer finally reviewed the sealed trust structure, it was like arriving at a house where every window had already been shuttered. The withdrawal came quietly, no follow-up subpoenas, no emergency hearings, just a single message forwarded to Ginny's inbox from Reuben. "As the matter appears to be thoroughly documented and legally sound, we will not be pursuing further action on behalf of Mr. Coates." She read it without expression, then deleted it without ceremony. That night, her phone buzzed. "Tommy, you're destroying your own family." She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, "You made it clear I wasn't part of it." She didn't hit send immediately. She just sat with the truth of it for a while, then tapped the screen. Delivered. Read. No reply. 2 days later, Ginny was packing a weekender bag in her bedroom when Marge wandered in with 2 train tickets and a mischievous grin. "Santa Fe," Marge declared. "I found a package that includes Adobe architecture tours and a hot air balloon ride." Ginny zipped the bag closed. "I thought we agreed no balloon rides after the Grand Junction incident." Marge shrugged. "Oh, come on. That guy wasn't technically drunk. Just altitude confused." They burst into laughter. By the time the train left Denver, Ginny was nestled beside the window with a scarf around her neck and a cocktail in hand. Marge raised her glass. To freedom, Ginny smirked. To airtight paperwork, they clinked glasses. As the train cut through sun-scorched plains and mesas rose like sunken cathedrals in the distance, Ginny felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not relief, not victory. Sanity. The kind that comes when you finally stopped asking people to believe your side of the story. Because your life has already proven it. They arrived in Santa Fe to desert light and dry air that wrapped around Ginny like permission. At the inn, she opened her travel journal, a half-filled leather notebook, and wrote a single line across the top of a fresh page. "He tried to prove I was incapable. I proved I was gone." The invitation was handwritten, folded into thirds, and slipped under Ellie's dorm room door on a Tuesday morning. Front, Pacific Northwest Rail Tour, spring departure, seniors ride free inside. Ginny had written in blue ink. "I've reserved 2 rooms, one for Marge, one for me. The third is yours, if you want it. No pressure, no strings, just tracks." GC, beneath the note was a full itinerary. Seattle to Vancouver, stops in Portland and Whidbey Island, 3 nights at a forest lodge where breakfast was served on wooden trays with rosemary honey and postcards tucked into each napkin. Ellie stared at it for a full minute before she remembered to breathe. 2 days later, Ginny answered a phone call that began not with hello, but with demand. "She's still 17, Tommy barked. "You can't just take her across the damn country." "I didn't take her anywhere," Ginny replied calmly. "I offered. That's more than you've ever done. She's not going, period." Ginny paused. Then let her voice drop into something level and cold. "Let her decide when she's 18. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. "You're undermining our parenting." "No," she said. "I'm offering your daughter a map. If that undermines you, maybe it says more than you think." She hung up before he could reply. Ellie didn't respond right away, but 1 week later, Ginny got a notification. A Postcards from Somewhere Else has published a new blog post. The header image: a single pair of boots standing at the edge of a foggy cliff, a train winding far below. Title: "Some Places You Can't Be Driven To. You Have to Walk Yourself There." Ginny read every word. "I used to think travel was about where you went. Now I think it's about who you leave behind and who you finally catch up to." At the bottom of the screen was a soft, pale footer. Site hosted anonymously via private grant. She smiled. Ruben had handled it well. Later that week, Tommy attempted to log into Ginny's health portal, trying to re-add himself as an emergency contact. His access had once been instant. Now, access denied. "You are not listed on this account. Please contact patient directly or submit legal documentation." He called Ruben's office, left 3 messages. None were returned. Back at Ginny's home, she was reviewing her trust binder by lamplight. Ruben across from her, reading line by line as the final lock provisions went into place. "From this point forward," he said, "no one, not even me, can make changes unless you explicitly initiate it." Ginny signed at the bottom of the last page. "Good," she said. "Let it settle." Ruben leaned back. "It's rare, you know. Most people your age, they don't do this until it's too late." Ginny folded the documents and placed them in a cedar box beside her chair. "I've already spent enough time being told what's too late," she said. "I've decided to be early for once." That night, she sent Ellie a 1-line email. "Pack light. The view's better when you're not carrying what isn't yours," Ellie replied 10 minutes later. "I'm in. Just tell Marge to go easy on the perfume this time." Chloe arrived on a Thursday afternoon in denim overalls and a ponytail that kept falling out of its tie. She wasn't family, she wasn't blood. She was the granddaughter of Ginny's late neighbor, once a babysitter, then a college student Ginny had quietly mentored when no one else noticed she was flailing. Now, Chloe was a newly certified notary with a portable scanner and a calmness that came from being underestimated too often. "I figured you could use some help organizing digital backups," she said, gesturing to the stack of estate files on Ginny's dining table. Ginny poured 2 iced teas and nodded toward the chair opposite her. "Let's scan the whole story." For the next 3 hours, they worked side by side. Chloe scanned, labeled, and uploaded everything: trust documents, letters, power of attorney revocations, even old handwritten notes Ginny insisted had meaning. Between uploads, they talked, not about Tommy or legal protections or battles, but about cooking and broken printers and the smell of old ink on linen paper. When they reached the last file, Ginny opened a drawer and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a vintage brass compass, worn around the edges but still functional. "This was mine in college," Ginny said. "It doesn't always point north, but it never points backward." She placed it in Chloe's palm and closed her fingers around it. Chloe blinked. "You're giving this to me?" "You showed up," Ginny said simply. "That matters more than DNA." Chloe looked down, studying the compass, then whispered, "This points in the right direction." Ginny smiled. "So do you." In the guest room, Ellie was zipping and unzipping her new travel backpack for the 3rd time. Marge sat cross-legged on the floor with a pile of packing cubes spread around her like trading cards. "Roll, don't fold," Marge instructed. "And never pack shoes you can't run in." Ellie laughed. "Are you expecting me to flee customs?" "Always be ready," Marge said, tossing her a TSA-sized bottle of lavender oil. "Put that in your shoe. Keeps it from smelling like fear." Ellie caught it midair and grinned. "I don't think I've ever packed this light." "That's the point," Marge said. "The heavier your bag, the less room you have to change your mind." From the doorway, Ginny watched them, Marge, passing down wisdom like contraband, Ellie soaking it up like light. That evening, Ginny stood in her hallway, adjusting the last of the Polaroids on her travel wall. She used tiny gold clips instead of push pins, each photo framed by soft twine: Sedona, Flagstaff, Santa Fe. A blurry picture of Marge pretending to high kick at a station stop. Not a single photo of Tommy remained. At the top of the wall, she tacked a small hand-lettered title card: "The company I kept." She stepped back and studied it, not as an act of nostalgia, but as a declaration. Later that night, Ginny opened the file labeled Obituary, Final Draft. She changed one line, just one: "Survived by those who carried her heart." She didn't cry. Instead, she attached the file to an email with the subject, "For safekeeping, not sadness," and sent it to Ruben. Outside, Ellie stepped onto the porch, barefoot, with a cup of mint tea in her hands. "Your travel wall looks amazing," she said. Ginny joined her. "It's not a wall, really. It's a door disguised as memory." Ellie turned to her. "What do I do when I get there?" Ginny didn't answer right away. Then, "You write it down. You tell someone what it felt like. You leave proof." Ellie nodded slowly. "I think I'm starting to understand what you've been doing all this time." "No," Ginny said softly. "You're starting to understand what you're capable of." The voice on the other end of the call was polite, almost apologetic. "I'm afraid the underwriters have flagged your file. It shows your financial profile recently changed, significantly. We can't proceed with the vacation home loan at this time." Tommy sat in the realtor's office, blinking. "But I was pre-approved." "Yes," the voice replied. "When your expected inheritance was listed as liquid collateral. That's no longer present." He tightened his grip on the phone. "You mean my mother removed me? That's what changed." There was a pause, followed by a textbook response. "I can only confirm what's visible in your file, sir." The call ended. He didn't move. Nadia, sitting beside him in a cream blazer and a frown too wide for the room, slammed her laptop closed. This was supposed to be ours, she snapped. Tommy stared at the glossy folder in front of them. Pictures of a ski-in lodge in Park City, already labeled with their initials. He pushed it away like it had suddenly turned toxic. Back in Denver, Ruben sat across from Ginny at his conference table with a folder stamped confidential, filed. We've submitted a proactive injunction, he said, not just blocking Tommy from attempting to access funds, but also flagging any attempts at financial influence as elder pressure. It's sealed, cross-filed, and archived in 3 counties. Ginny leaned back in her chair and exhaled. I used to think you only needed protection once you were weak, she said. Now I know the strongest people prepare early, before anyone else thinks they need to. Ruben smiled. That's why you've already won. The HOA board called Ginny in for a quick meeting that Friday. She walked in expecting a landscaping complaint. Instead, the president, Lynette, who always wore too much perfume and never enough patience, smiled and slid a pamphlet across the table. We've decided to upgrade your home security, she said. Motion lights, cameras, remote locks, all funded through your trust. Ruben already set it up. Ginny raised an eyebrow. I didn't ask for that. Lynette gave a gentle shrug. Sometimes the neighborhood pays attention after all. Ginny nodded. I suppose it's never too late to secure the perimeter. Outside the HOA building, she noticed someone had trimmed her hedges, swept her walkway. Quiet thank yous with pruning shears. 3 days later, a postcard arrived. The front showed the Lincoln Memorial at dusk, lit gold and stoic. On the back, Ellie had written in looping print, Day 3 of the Student Leadership Summit. We debated policy, wrote speeches, and I made a friend from Oregon who wants to go into foreign service. P.S. I used the lavender oil before my speech. Worked like a charm. Love you. E. Ginny turned the postcard over again and again, her thumb brushing the ink like it was still warm. She's going places, she said aloud, even though no one else was in the room. Marge, passing through with a basket of folded towels, smiled without stopping. So are you. That night, as Ginny updated her travel wall with a new Polaroid, Ellie's blurry face in front of the Capitol, hair blowing wildly in the wind, her phone lit up with a notification. iNadia Vibes has unfollowed you. Ginny stared at the screen for a second, then tapped into the app. All of Nadia's posts were gone from her feed. Filtered beach photos, perfect kitchen shots, family hikes with captions like, Ha, blessed. A digital silence, a closed window. She tapped her screen and whispered, You were never following me anyway. The auditorium smelled like old carpet and optimism. It was the Senior Life Empowerment Expo, one of those events tucked between craft fairs and blood pressure checks, usually overlooked in the community bulletin. But this year, someone had written Ginny's name at the top of the flyer. Keynote speaker, Virginia Coates, reclaiming the root freedom over familiarity. She stood backstage in slacks and a navy blazer, fingers resting on the compass brooch pinned to her collar. Marge was in the second row with a thermos of mint tea and a look that could level hecklers. The host's voice rang out, Please welcome a woman who redefined what retirement can look like. The applause wasn't thunderous, but it was real. Ginny walked to the podium without notes. People like to say aging is freedom, she began. But what they mean is freedom from expectations, from relevance, from risk. She let the pause breathe. They call it a golden age, but they hand us plastic chairs, discount menus, and the assumption we'll keep quiet unless asked. The room shifted. The silence got sharper. I'm here to tell you, age is not permission to be discarded. A murmur of agreement. Someone clapped. She went on, about being written off, about finding independence not through rebellion but through redirection. She spoke plainly, without bitterness, just clarity. My son once told me I was too old to travel with him, so I took the trip without him, and I haven't stopped since. By the time she stepped down, the applause felt like sunlight. Not warm for show, warm because it had earned its rise. At the adjoining gallery, Ginny's framed Polaroids lined the wall in uneven, joyful clusters. Sedona's red canyons, Ellie's blurry Capitol photo, Marge pretending to toast champagne with a plastic cup in front of a rainy station. A small card beneath the title read, "The Company I Kept, Travels Beyond Expectation," curated by Virginia Coates. For all those who walked out, not away. As she stood back, sipping cider from a plastic flute, Reuben arrived beside her, holding a white envelope. "Final confirmation," he said. "The trust is sealed, locked, irrevocable." "You're untouchable." Ginny didn't flinch. "Funny," she said. "I thought I'd feel safer when I signed it. But it's now that it's filed. I finally feel seen." Reuben smiled. Legacy tends to be louder when you stop trying to shout it. She tucked the envelope into her purse. "Thank you, Reuben." "No need," he said. "You were the architect. I just laid the bricks." That night, she sat at her kitchen table with a soft leather envelope, the kind you don't mail without meaning it. Inside, a printed plane ticket to Dublin, open return, a folded map with no markings, a handwritten note on thick stationery. "Ellie, the world is yours. Go find the pieces of yourself no one else ever handed you. And if you lose the way, just keep walking. I trust where you're going." Grandma G. She sealed it with a gold sticker. No postage. She'd hand-deliver it tomorrow. 3 days later, a letter arrived in a neat blue envelope with the return address handwritten, C. Langford. Inside was a thank you note on crisp white paper. "Dear Ginny, the compass sits beside my desk. It doesn't always point north, but I think that's the point. I wanted you to know I applied for the scholarship you mentioned. Got in. I'll be leaving for Oregon in the fall. Thank you for seeing me before I saw myself." Chloe Ginny smiled, then slipped the note into her legacy folder next to Ellie's postcard from D.C. and a printed copy of her speech from the expo. Her wall of photos had grown another string of gold clips, and still, there was space. The clinic room was too white. Ginny sat perched on the edge of the paper-covered exam table, her blazer neatly folded over her lap. The blood pressure cuff had left a faint ring around her upper arm, and the stethoscope still echoed faintly in her ears, like the memory of a train whistle, long after the engine passed. Dr. Leland pulled up a chair. No clipboard, no preamble, just eyes full of the kind of steadiness that came from having been the bearer of news more times than he wanted to count. "I want to be clear," he said gently. "This isn't a crisis, but it's something we watch closely." Ginny met his gaze without flinching. "Say it plain." He nodded once. Early signs of vascular decline, cognitive function still strong. But the patterns we see, occasional delays in processing, small hesitations in recall, they're early flags. It could stabilize, or it could progress. Ginny tilted her head. "How long?" "There's no clock on this," he replied. "But now is the time to document what matters, while you're still fully you." She exhaled, slow and silent. "I've always been fully me," she said. "This just means I'll leave better directions for when I'm not." Back home, she made tea she didn't drink. Instead, she opened her laptop and her cedar lockbox and began a new folder, paper and digital, titled simply Ellie. Passwords went first. Accounts, safe deposit box keys, then recipes, book titles, the playlist she'd made for the Pacific Northwest trip and never played in full. She added scanned Polaroids with captions typed below in her favorite serif font. "Your grandma doing the splits at age 72. Yes, that's Marge laughing in the background." Then a letter, "Ellie." When people talk about legacy, they often mean money. I mean maps. This is a trail I started so you wouldn't feel like you had to stand still. Keep going, even when you don't know where you're headed, especially then. She placed everything, flash drive, notes, one scarf that still held the scent of rosemary, into a shoebox-sized case with brass corners and a leather handle. On the lid, in gold embossed lettering, "For your next departure." Ellie arrived on a Tuesday evening, winded from the train station, her cheeks flushed and her backpack half zipped. She didn't knock, just opened the screen door like she always had. "I brought muffins," she said breathlessly, "but I sat on the bag." Ginny smiled. "Perfect. Flattened food travels better anyway." They ate them on the porch in silence, the sun curling down over the edge of the neighborhood like it didn't want to leave. At some point, Ellie reached over and held Ginny's hand. "I know," she whispered. "You don't have to say it." Ginny squeezed back. "I never needed them," she said. "Just direction. You gave me that." Ellie's voice cracked. "You gave it to me first." Inside, Ginny led her to the guest room where the box waited on the bed. "For your next departure," she said softly. "It's not for now, but it's yours." Ellie ran her hand over the lid, her eyes shining. "Thank you," she said, "for always taking me with you, even when we weren't going the same way." Ginny blinked back a sting behind her eyes. "That's the thing, Elle. The road bends, but the heart doesn't." Later that night, Ellie found her grandmother at the dining table, typing something slowly, deliberately. "What are you working on?" she asked. Ginny didn't stop typing. "Instructions," she said, "for how to let go, just in case you forget how brave you are." Ellie stood behind her, watching the words appear, line by line, deliberate and strong. She didn't interrupt, just placed her hand gently on Ginny's shoulder, grounding her in the moment. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, everything held. Ginny's final project was not dramatic. It didn't go viral. It didn't trend. It wasn't printed or published or optioned for a movie of the week, but it was real, honest, built sentence by sentence on a borrowed laptop, and stitched together with the quiet urgency of someone who finally knew how little time was left, and how much of it still mattered. The title, typed in bold across the first page, read, "One Woman, One Carry-On, a travelogue for the uninvited." Each entry was dated, not with the year, but the emotion. The day I packed light. The day the door closed. The day I finally left without asking permission. Ellie found the file after. It was saved neatly inside a folder called Departure Lounge. There was no announcement, no emergency, no bedside theatrics. Just mourning. Ginny passed in her own bed, in her own home, with the window cracked open and the sun streaming in like it knew her personally. Her passport rested on the nightstand. Her slippers were aligned beside the bed, ready for a step she didn't need to take. Marge found her, sitting as if she'd only just closed her eyes mid-thought. No mess, no drama, just an absence so gentle it could only be described as earned. 2 weeks later, the trust dispersed. Ellie received an envelope containing her college tuition paid in full, a grant voucher for an international mentorship program in Copenhagen, and a boarding pass-shaped card that read, "Round trip, anywhere." The nonprofit Ginny once funded on a whim now bore a new plaque. The Virginia Coates Travel Legacy Fund, for women leaving with nothing but will in Denver. A law firm assistant slid a certified envelope across a glass desk to a man who no longer looked like he owned anything but bitterness. Tommy opened it. Inside was a single sheet of legal paper. "Dear Mr. Coates, you are not a beneficiary of this estate. You are not included in any financial or symbolic disbursement. You may not contact the executor. You may not appeal. This trust is sealed. This woman is gone. This future is not yours." He read it 3 times, folded it 4, then crumpled it and threw it across the room, as if the paper had failed him, and not the life he thought he could coast through forever. In her kitchen, Nadia sat alone at the table, flipping through a glossy travel brochure Ginny had once left behind. Pacific Rail tours, lakeside lodges, a photo of a silver-haired woman standing on a platform, head tipped back in laughter, wind in her coat. She traced her finger across the page but didn't tear it out. She didn't book anything. She just sat there, in the same kitchen where Tommy once pitched real estate schemes, and aging parents were just financial tools in waiting. She didn't speak, didn't post, didn't blink for a very long time. At a train station halfway between goodbye and beginning, Ellie stood on the platform, clutching her backpack with one hand and a ticket with the other. She wore a coat her grandmother once mended and boots she'd bought with her first part-time job. Her eyes were glassy, but not from grief, from motion. She looked up at the LED board flashing platform changes, departures, delays. Then she looked down at the ticket again. One way. Destination handwritten in ink. Anywhere brave enough. The conductor's voice came through the static. Last call. Ellie took a step forward, then another. She didn't look back.